Hey guys, welcome back to Bryan's Mysteries and Adventures on Trail, and today's video is taking us to Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve. And this is a park located in Alaska, which is in America. It is in the southeast part of Alaska, west of the capital of Juneau. Now, this park was proclaimed an area by Calvin Coolidge under the Antiquities Act of February 25th of 1925. Now, it was subsequently expanded by a tremendous amount by Jimmy Carter in 1978 with the Alaskan National Interest Lands Conservation Act, which enlarged the national monument by about 523,000 acres. Then on December 2nd of 1980, this was signed into law, which provided varying degrees of protection for over 157 million acres of land, national parks, and wildlife refuges, which basically this Alaskan Interest Conservation Act was, and still remains to this day, the largest expansion of protected lands in history, and it more than doubled the size of the national park system. So we got to give it to the peanut farmer for that one. Now, Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve covers over 3.3 million acres of various terrain, rugged mountains, all kinds of glaciers, temperate rainforest, wild coastlines, and deep sheltered fords. Now, Glacier Bay National Park is pretty much the main attraction in and around the Juneau area, and a part of a 25 million acre World Heritage Site, and it's one of the largest international protected areas. Within the boundaries of the park are the ancestral homes to the Tilingit Tribe, and they are an indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest. Their language is the Tilingit language, and that means people of the tides. And their ancestral homelands that are within the boundaries are still cultural and have spiritual significance to the living communities today. So today's case takes us back to Glacier Bay National Park in late September of 1985, when a gentleman by the name of Kevin O'Keefe, he was 36 years old at the time, and he was a very experienced outdoorsman. He had done all kinds of hikes in and around the area. He was very familiar with the Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve. Now, for this particular trip, Kevin had done an amazing amount of planning. He had spent weeks planning this trip. He took several different survival classes. He brought enough equipment and supplies with him to last him an entire month in Glacier Bay, even though his plan was to only be there for 2 weeks. Now, his plan was to be there for the 2 weeks and then go back to the airport and meet his wife and fly home. Kevin O'Keefe was from Sacramento, California, and he arrived in Juneau, Alaska on September 20th of 1985. 2 days later, he took a float plane, which is one of the main ways that people get around out there, especially to very remote areas, but also to many of the parks. So he took this float plane to the Muir Inlet, which is north of Wolf Point, to establish his base camp. However, before doing that, he spoke to the park rangers and he told them his plans and how long he was going to be out for. And the whole reason for Kevin taking this trip was that he wanted to get away from technology. So nobody was expecting for him to call during the 2 weeks he was out there. And this was before cell phones, of course. Well, after a week passed, and it was roughly 2 days before Kevin planned on leaving, October 8th of 1985 to be exact, Park Ranger David Nemeth and his partner were just patrolling the area of Wolf's Point, which is the area that Kevin had told them that he was staying. The Rangers immediately knew something was wrong because there was a designated spot for the tent. However, Kevin's tent was a few meters below that, near the shoreline, and of course they noticed a bunch of gear and supplies that were just sort of strewn about. So the Rangers decided to investigate the scene, and the first thing they noticed that the tent was closed. So they opened up the tent and they found Kevin's bag with all his hiking equipment, food and water. It was all packed up as if he had packed it up that he was going on a hike. So They just justified it as that he was, out looking for firewood or out scouting a site or something, and then he was going to come back and then go hiking. They knew that he was a very experienced and competent outdoorsman and that he knew the area, so they didn't have any cause for concern at that time. So the day following the initial discovery of the tent, the Rangers, of course, went back to the campsite, but it was exactly the same. It was untouched. It obviously looked like Kevin hadn't slept there. It did look like there was the tent pole, the main pole, the tent had been bent somewhat, but they were at this point concerned. So they left and informed the Alaska State Troopers, as well as 100 park rangers with search dogs, not only from the Wolf's Point, but Glacier Bay area. And they also put out various air searches as well. Now, investigators, of course, combed through Kevin's campsite, and they noticed that everything that you would need for survival in the wilderness, like your puffy coat, food, water, was all left at the site. The Alaska State Troopers immediately contacted Mr. O'Keefe's family and spoke to them on October 10th of 1985, and they spoke to the relatives asking what kind of hiking routines he would do, and they told the authorities that he only did short day hikes and that he would not be doing any overnight hikes. So of course that was even more cause for concern. Even more alarming was a couple days later they found a pair of boots, a glove liner, and a hat that were found several hundred yards from the campsite, apparently in this gully that were out of sight from the camp. And obviously these items would be very crucial to surviving in the Alaska wilderness. Not only that, they found this very bizarre because they knew Kevin to be a very experienced outdoorsman. So this search went on for weeks, and it was highly involved. There was hundreds of volunteers. They had all kinds of various search dogs, and then of course helicopters. And what is even odder is all the rangers and people that were involved in the search, they said that there were no animal tracks, there were no bear tracks at all. And this was October, and October is a prime season for bears because they are going into hibernation, so they're eating a lot more. They're really struggling for survival basically, so they're trying to stockpile as much food in their bellies as possible. And here Kevin had all this food and supplies and whatnot, and there were no animal tracks anywhere near his campsite, according to what the authorities said. It was an extremely intensive search, especially in 1985, and the investigators are quoted in saying they were utterly perplexed by the situation and weren't even able to hypothesize what could have happened. It was like Kevin just disappeared off of the face of the earth. And they said one of the most bizarre parts was the fact that the whole time they were out searching, they left the campsite untouched, and there was tons of food out in the open and no animals touched it. It was like, even after the search parties had left and then they came back to the campsite area, all the food and everything was untouched. The rangers are quoted in saying it looked like it appeared that the animals were purposely avoiding Kevin's campsite, which to them made absolutely no sense because, they said that up in that area of Alaska, or anywhere for that matter, if there's open food around, bears will get it within a few minutes. And this food had been out for days and weeks and nothing touched it. Nothing even came near his campsite. So this is just such a bizarre case. And to this day, he's never been found. They never found any other clues, nothing. So what happened to Kevin Robert O'Keefe, and why did they find his tent and all his stuff in such condition, like it was all packed up, and his boot and glove and the other thing hundreds of yards away in this gully? I mean, how did that stuff get there? Did he possibly wander off and maybe got attacked by an animal? But they said that they did a hard target search of the whole area and they found no evidence of any animals for that matter, no tracks, no evidence of animal predation. I mean, it's just so bizarre that all of his gear was zipped up inside his tent except for a boot, a glove liner and a hat. I mean, how did that stuff get in that gully? Maybe he was just out collecting firewood, like they said, and something happened to him then. Maybe he took a really bad fall and nature covered up his remains. I mean, who knows? But it is just such a bizarre case. And even the park rangers and authorities that worked on this case said that it is one of the most, if not the most, baffling cases that they've ever worked on, because of the clues that were left and the fact that he was an experienced hiker and that he left his itinerary with people and he was known for safety, and that just nothing has ever been found despite the massive search effort that went on. And I don't know, I just can't imagine what his wife went through and all his family members, and my thoughts and prayers go out to her and his family and everyone who knew him, and they can get the closure that they so desperately want and need, and I'm sure anybody in this situation would want. If he is alive today, he would be roughly 72 or 73 years old, and obviously I'd like to dedicate this video to Kevin O'Keefe, his friends and family, and just hoping one day he will be found and be able to be given a proper burial or brought back to his family one way or another. I want to thank everybody for watching as always, and please be respectful in the comments if you choose to leave them. Special thank you to co.ag for providing the background music, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Take care. Hey guys, thanks for sticking with me till the end as always. I just wanted to say thank you to anybody who has bought a calendar, and if you've bought it and paid through PayPal and sent me a message, I really appreciate all your messages that you send, and I'm so sorry that I can't reply back. For whatever reason, my PayPal app will not let me reply to anyone's messages, so it's not that I don't appreciate your message. If you have left me a message, I always want to reply, but I just can't with my PayPal for some reason. It just says I cannot reply to messages. But if you do use Venmo, I can reply to messages on that. And I thank you for all your donations and everyone that's bought a calendar. And if you would like a calendar, I'll have that information in the description. They are $17. You can pay by Venmo is the preferred method. PayPal you can pay too. It's just that PayPal, they charge a fee and they hold the funds for almost a month, which I think is funny. And if you have any case suggestions or would like to submit one of your own wilderness stories, please, I'll have my email in the description as always, and you can always email me those stories. And thanks everybody for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Hope you're having a great weekend.